For 37 years, Agent Marcus Steele Thompson carried the darkest secret in federal law enforcement history. As the lead investigator for the government's most classified cryptid hunting unit, he had tracked, studied, and engaged with creatures that officially didn't exist across every remote corner of the United States. But what he discovered during those decades of pursuit wasn't just proof of Bigfoot's existence, it was evidence of a shadow war between species that had been raging for over a century, with casualties on both sides that the public would never know about. In his final confession, recorded just hours before his death from pancreatic cancer in 2019, Agent Thompson revealed the true scope of the government's cryptid operations, the intelligence and capabilities of the creatures they hunted, and the horrifying reason why contact between humans and these beings could never be allowed. His testimony exposed a reality so disturbing that it challenges everything we believe about evolution, intelligence, and humanity's place at the top of the food chain. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Agent Marcus Thompson was 74 years old when he passed away in a secure medical facility outside Quantico, Virginia, on November 3, 2019. To his family and the few colleagues who knew him personally, he was a dedicated federal agent who had spent his career investigating unusual phenomena and unexplained incidents across the United States. His official record showed assignments with various agencies, including the FBI, Fish and Wildlife Service, and Department of Homeland Security. But his real work, the mission that defined his life and consumed his soul for nearly 4 decades, remained buried in classified files so deep that most government officials with top-secret clearances had never heard of the unit he commanded. The Cryptid Research and Containment Division, known internally as the Hunters, was established in 1982 following a series of incidents that convinced federal authorities that certain legendary creatures posed genuine threats to national security. Agent Thompson, then 37 years old and already a veteran of military special operations and federal law enforcement, was recruited to lead this unprecedented unit. They came to me because I had experience with things that couldn't be explained through conventional means, Thompson would later confess in his deathbed recording. I'd investigated UFO incidents, unexplained animal attacks, and missing persons cases that defied logical explanation, but nothing in my background had prepared me for what I would encounter over the next 37 years. The unit's formation was triggered by what became known internally as the Cascade Incident, a series of encounters in the Pacific Northwest during the summer of 1981 that resulted in the deaths of 14 people and the complete disappearance of a National Guard unit that had been deployed to investigate reports of unusual wildlife activity. The official story blamed the deaths on a combination of bear attacks, equipment failures, and severe weather conditions, but classified reports painted a very different picture, one of coordinated attacks by highly intelligent creatures that demonstrated tactical knowledge, advanced planning, and the ability to neutralize modern military equipment and trained personnel. The creatures weren't just defending territory, Thompson revealed in his confession. They were conducting military operations. They had studied our tactics, learned our weaknesses, and developed countermeasures that made our standard procedures useless. We were dealing with an enemy that understood warfare better than we did. Agent Thompson's first assignment was to investigate the Cascade Incident and determine whether the creatures responsible posed an ongoing threat to civilian populations and government operations. What he discovered during that initial investigation would shape the next 4 decades of his life and reveal the existence of a conflict that had been hidden from the American public for over a century. The evidence Thompson uncovered in the Cascade Mountains was unlike anything in federal law enforcement files. The attack sites showed signs of coordinated assault tactics that indicated multiple creatures working together with military precision. Equipment had been disabled in ways that suggested sophisticated understanding of human technology. Bodies had been arranged in patterns that appeared to be messages or warnings directed at human authorities. They weren't just killing randomly, Thompson documented in his early reports. Every action was calculated. Every casualty was strategic. They were sending a message that they could eliminate human presence in their territory whenever they chose to do so. But they were also demonstrating restraint, showing us that the casualties could have been much higher if they had wanted total destruction. The creatures had left behind evidence of their presence that challenged every assumption about their nature and capabilities. Footprints showed not just size and weight, but gait patterns that indicated bipedal locomotion more sophisticated than any known primate. Tool marks on damaged equipment revealed the use of implements that exceeded the technological capabilities attributed to primitive forest dwellers. Most disturbing were the communication attempts, symbols carved into trees and arranged stones that appeared to be a form of written language. Linguistic analysis suggested a complex symbolic system that indicated abstract thinking, cultural transmission, and possibly even historical record-keeping. "We realized we weren't dealing with animals," Thompson confessed. "These were intelligent beings, with their own language, their own technology, their own social organization. They were essentially a parallel civilization that had remained hidden while human society developed around them." The discovery led to the establishment of the Cryptid Research and Containment Division, with a mandate that went far beyond simple investigation. The unit was tasked with monitoring cryptid activity across the United States, developing countermeasures for creature-related threats, and most importantly, maintaining absolute secrecy about the existence of these beings. Thompson was given command of a team of specialists drawn from military special forces, wildlife biology, linguistics, anthropology, and psychological operations. The unit operated with unlimited funding, access to cutting-edge technology, and authority that superseded local and state law enforcement agencies, but they were also bound by restrictions that made their mission nearly impossible to accomplish. They could not acknowledge the existence of their targets, could not seek assistance from outside agencies, and could not reveal the true nature of their work to anyone without the highest security clearances. "We were fighting a shadow war against an enemy we couldn't admit existed," Thompson explained. "Every operation had to be conducted in complete secrecy, every casualty had to be explained through conventional means, every piece of evidence had to be classified or destroyed to maintain the cover-up." The unit's first major operation took place in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State in the spring of 1983. Intelligence indicated that a large population of creatures had established a permanent settlement in the remote interior of the peninsula and were expanding their territory in ways that threatened to bring them into contact with civilian populations. Thompson led a team of 12 specialists into the area, with orders to assess the threat level and develop strategies for containment or elimination if necessary. What they discovered during that 6-week operation changed their understanding of what they were facing and revealed the true scope of the challenge ahead. The settlement wasn't just a collection of primitive shelters, Thompson documented. It was a sophisticated community with permanent structures, organized agriculture, and technological capabilities that exceeded anything we had expected. These beings had created a civilization that was completely hidden from human detection, but was more advanced in many ways than our own rural communities. The creatures had developed construction techniques that created durable, comfortable dwellings that were virtually invisible from aerial surveillance. They had established agricultural systems that enhanced rather than damaged the forest ecosystem while producing abundant food. They had implemented water management, waste disposal, and resource distribution systems that demonstrated advanced planning and engineering capabilities. Most remarkably, they had achieved all of this while maintaining complete concealment from human observation. Their settlement was located less than 50 miles from major population centers, but had remained undetected despite decades of human activity in the surrounding area. They had mastered the art of invisibility, Thompson observed, not through magic or supernatural abilities, but through superior understanding of camouflage, sound discipline, and environmental integration. They could live in our backyard without us ever knowing they were there. The creature's awareness of human activity was equally sophisticated. They had been monitoring government operations, tracking military movements, and observing civilian behavior with systematic thoroughness that indicated organized intelligence gathering. Thompson's team discovered evidence that the creatures had been studying human society for generations, learning our languages, understanding our technology, and developing detailed knowledge of our social and political structures. They knew more about human capabilities and intentions than most humans knew about each other. They had files on us, Thompson revealed in his confession. Not written records, but oral histories that preserved detailed information about human behavior, government operations, and military capabilities going back over a century. They knew our strengths and weaknesses better than we knew theirs. The creatures had also developed countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize human advantages in technology and firepower. They had learned to disable electronic equipment, avoid thermal imaging, and counter surveillance techniques through methods that suggested they had been studying human technology for decades. Every piece of equipment we brought into their territory was compromised within hours, Thompson documented. Radios stopped working, night vision equipment failed, GPS systems provided false readings. They had developed ways to turn our technological advantages against us. The psychological impact on Thompson's team was severe. They were accustomed to being the hunters, the superior force with overwhelming advantages in equipment and training. But in the creature's territory, they became the hunted, constantly watched, systematically countered, and psychologically pressured by beings who understood human weaknesses better than humans understood creature capabilities. We were completely outmatched, Thompson admitted, not just in terms of physical capabilities, but in intelligence, preparation, and understanding of the operational environment. They had been preparing for this confrontation for generations, while we were just learning that they existed. The operation ended without direct confrontation, but with the sobering realization that the creatures posed a threat that could not be addressed through conventional military or law enforcement methods. They were too intelligent to be trapped, too well prepared to be surprised, and too well concealed to be located and eliminated through standard tactics. Thompson's recommendation was to establish a long-term monitoring and containment strategy that focused on preventing creature-human contact rather than attempting to eliminate the creatures themselves. The risks of direct confrontation were too high, and the creatures had demonstrated that they preferred avoidance to conflict when possible. But other incidents across the country were forcing the government to reconsider this cautious approach. Reports were coming in from Alaska, Montana, Colorado, and other states, with large wilderness areas indicating that creature populations were growing and becoming more active. Some encounters had resulted in human casualties that could not be explained through conventional means, and there were indications that different creature populations were communicating and coordinating their activities. We were dealing with a nationwide phenomenon, Thompson explained. These weren't isolated populations of primitive forest dwellers. They were part of a connected network that spanned the entire continent, with communication systems and organizational structures that we didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The most disturbing development was evidence that some creature populations were becoming more aggressive in their interactions with humans. While most encounters still ended with the creatures withdrawing to avoid contact, there were increasing reports of territorial behavior, property damage, and direct confrontations that suggested a shift in creature attitudes toward human expansion. Thompson was tasked with developing a comprehensive response strategy that could address creature activity on a national scale, while maintaining the secrecy that government officials considered essential for preventing public panic and social disruption. The strategy that emerged from this analysis became known as the Containment Protocol, a systematic approach to monitoring creature populations, preventing human-creature contact, and responding to incidents in ways that maintained the official denial of creature existence. The protocol involved establishing monitoring stations in areas of high creature activity, developing rapid response teams that could investigate incidents and manage evidence, and creating cover stories that could explain unusual events through conventional means. We became masters of deception, Thompson confessed. Every creature encounter had to be explained as bear attacks, equipment failures, natural disasters, or human error. We developed an entire mythology of conventional explanations that could account for any evidence of creature activity. The unit also developed relationships with local law enforcement, park services, and military units that could provide support without being informed of the true nature of their missions. These partnerships were essential for maintaining operational security while ensuring that creature-related incidents could be contained and managed effectively. But the most challenging aspect of the containment protocol was dealing with civilian witnesses who had encountered creatures directly. These individuals posed the greatest threat to operational security, and the unit developed increasingly sophisticated methods for managing their testimony and ensuring their silence. We had to discredit, intimidate, or silence anyone who had seen too much, Thompson revealed. Sometimes that meant character assassination, sometimes it meant legal threats, and sometimes it meant more direct intervention. We did whatever was necessary to protect the secret, regardless of the cost to innocent people. The psychological toll of this work on Thompson and his team was enormous. They were constantly lying to colleagues, friends, and family members about the nature of their work. They were destroying evidence, manipulating investigations, and silencing witnesses in ways that violated every principle of law enforcement and scientific inquiry. "We became the bad guys in our own story," Thompson admitted. "We were supposed to be protecting the public, but we were lying to them, covering up threats they had a right to know about, and destroying evidence that could have advanced human knowledge by centuries." The moral complexity of the situation was compounded by the growing realization that the creatures were not the mindless monsters that government officials had initially assumed. As Thompson's understanding of creature intelligence and social organization deepened, he began to question whether humans had any right to hunt, contain, or eliminate beings that were clearly conscious, intelligent, and morally sophisticated. "The more I learned about them, the more I realized that we were the invaders," Thompson confessed. They had been living in harmony with the natural environment for thousands of years before human civilization arrived. We had destroyed their habitat, polluted their environment, and driven them into hiding, and now we were hunting them for defending themselves. The creature's moral code was particularly troubling for Thompson and his team. Despite their physical superiority and tactical advantages, the creatures consistently showed restraint in their interactions with humans. They killed only when directly threatened. They avoided civilian populations whenever possible, and they demonstrated concern for human welfare that exceeded what humans typically showed for creature welfare. "They were better than us," Thompson admitted. "More intelligent, more ethical, more concerned with the welfare of other species. They had achieved what human civilization claims to aspire to, but has never accomplished: true wisdom combined with power." This realization led to a crisis of conscience that would define the remainder of Thompson's career. He continued to carry out his orders and maintain the containment protocol, but he began secretly documenting evidence that contradicted the official narrative about creature nature and capabilities. Thompson started keeping detailed personal records of creature encounters, intelligence assessments, and moral evaluations that painted a very different picture from the official reports he submitted to his superiors. These records would eventually become the foundation for his deathbed confession and the most comprehensive documentation of creature-human interactions ever compiled. The turning point in Thompson's understanding came during what became known as the Montana Incident in 1994. A family of hikers had disappeared in Glacier National Park under circumstances that suggested creature involvement, and Thompson's team was dispatched to investigate and manage the situation. What they discovered challenged every assumption about creature behavior and revealed capabilities that exceeded anything they had previously documented. The missing family had been taken by a group of creatures, but they had not been harmed. Instead, they had been cared for, protected from a severe storm that would likely have killed them, and eventually guided back to safety by beings who had no obligation to help them and every reason to avoid contact. The creatures had saved their lives, Thompson documented in his personal files. A human family had wandered into creature territory during dangerous weather conditions, and instead of eliminating the threat to their security, the creatures had provided shelter, food, and medical care until the danger passed. The family's account of their experience, obtained during classified debriefing sessions, revealed the extent of creature intelligence and moral development. The beings had communicated with them through gestures and basic English, had demonstrated advanced medical knowledge in treating injuries, and had shown genuine concern for their welfare throughout the ordeal. The creatures had risked their own security to save human lives, Thompson noted. They had violated their own protocols for avoiding human contact because they couldn't allow innocent people to die when they had the power to help. The incident forced Thompson to confront the fundamental contradiction in his mission. He was hunting beings who were demonstrably more ethical and morally advanced than the humans he was sworn to protect. The creatures posed no threat to human civilization beyond their refusal to submit to human authority, and their actions consistently demonstrated concern for human welfare that exceeded what humans showed for creature welfare. "I realized that we were the monsters in this story," Thompson confessed. "We were hunting beings who were superior to us in every way that mattered: intelligence, ethics, environmental stewardship, social organization. We were trying to eliminate them because we couldn't tolerate the existence of anything that challenged human supremacy." But Thompson's growing sympathy for the creatures was complicated by incidents that revealed the full extent of their capabilities and the potential threat they could pose if they chose to abandon their restraint. The Colorado event of 1998 demonstrated what creatures could accomplish when they decided that human activities posed unacceptable threats to their survival. A mining operation in the Rocky Mountains had unknowingly encroached on creature territory, and the beings' response was swift, coordinated, and devastatingly effective. They eliminated the entire operation overnight, Thompson documented. 57 workers, millions of dollars in equipment, and a facility that had taken 3 years to build, all destroyed in a single coordinated assault that left no survivors and no evidence of what had really happened. The attack demonstrated tactical sophistication that exceeded anything in military training manuals. The creatures had studied the facility for months, identified vulnerabilities in security and operations, and executed a plan that neutralized all human resistance while destroying the infrastructure completely. They had turned the mining equipment against itself, Thompson observed. Explosives were redirected to bring down the entire operation, vehicles were sabotaged to prevent escape, and communication systems were disabled to prevent calls for help. It was a masterpiece of tactical planning and execution. The official investigation blamed the disaster on equipment failures and human error, but Thompson's classified analysis revealed evidence of creature involvement that was undeniable. The precision of the destruction, the coordination of the attacks, and the complete elimination of witnesses indicated planning and execution capabilities that exceeded those of most military special forces units. They had sent a message, Thompson noted. They were showing us what they could do if we pushed them too far. The restraint they had shown in previous encounters wasn't weakness, it was mercy, and that mercy had limits. The Colorado event marked a turning point in government policy toward creature populations. The previous strategy of containment and monitoring was replaced by more aggressive measures designed to eliminate creature populations before they could pose similar threats to other human operations. Thompson was ordered to develop and implement final solution protocols, systematic operations designed to locate and eliminate creature populations across the United States. The mission was classified at levels that exceeded nuclear weapons programs, and the personnel involved were subject to security measures that included constant surveillance and potential termination for security breaches. They wanted me to commit genocide, Thompson confessed. They wanted me to eliminate an entire species because they were too intelligent, too capable, and too independent to be controlled through conventional means. They couldn't tolerate the existence of beings who challenged human supremacy. The final solution protocols involved the development of biological weapons specifically designed to target creature physiology, the deployment of advanced surveillance technologies to locate hidden populations, and the training of elimination teams equipped with weapons and tactics designed to overcome creature advantages in strength and intelligence. Thompson participated in the development of these protocols while secretly documenting the process and questioning the moral and legal implications of what he was being ordered to do. His personal files from this period reveal the psychological strain of preparing to commit actions that he knew were fundamentally wrong but felt powerless to prevent. "I was trapped," Thompson admitted. "I knew that what we were planning was evil, but I also knew that refusing to participate would result in my elimination and replacement by someone who might be even more ruthless. I convinced myself that I could find ways to sabotage the operation from within while maintaining my cover." The first test of the final solution protocols took place in Alaska in 2003, targeting a creature population that had been identified through satellite surveillance and electronic monitoring. The operation was designed to be a proof of concept for larger elimination campaigns that would eventually cover the entire continent. Thompson led the operation personally, hoping to find ways to minimize casualties while appearing to carry out his orders effectively. What happened during that mission would haunt him for the remainder of his life and ultimately lead to his decision to reveal the truth about the government's cryptid operations. "The creatures knew we were coming," Thompson documented. "They had been monitoring our preparations, analyzing our capabilities, and developing countermeasures that turned our own weapons against us. When we arrived at their location, we found that they had prepared a reception that demonstrated just how outmatched we really were. The creature population had evacuated their primary settlement and established defensive positions that neutralized every advantage the human team possessed. Electronic equipment failed, weapons malfunctioned, and communication systems were jammed by methods that exceeded anything in human technology. But instead of eliminating the human team, the creatures chose to deliver a message that revealed the full extent of their knowledge about government operations and their intentions regarding human civilization. They knew everything, Thompson confessed. They knew about the final solution protocols, they knew about our weapons development, they knew about our plans for systematic elimination. They had been monitoring our communications, infiltrating our facilities and gathering intelligence that exceeded anything our own agencies had accomplished. The creature's message was delivered through a combination of technological demonstration and direct communication that left no doubt about their capabilities or their intentions. They revealed that they had been preparing for the possibility of human aggression for decades, developing countermeasures and defensive strategies that would make any elimination campaign impossible to complete successfully. They showed us recordings of our own classified meetings, Thompson documented. They played back conversations that had taken place in secure facilities, revealed details of operations that were known only to the highest levels of government. They had been watching us as closely as we had been watching them, but they had been much more successful at gathering intelligence. The creatures also revealed the existence of alliance networks that connected populations across multiple continents, communication systems that allowed real-time coordination of defensive measures, and technological capabilities that exceeded human understanding in several key areas. They weren't just defending themselves, Thompson realized. They were part of a global network of intelligent species that had been monitoring human development and preparing for the possibility that our expansion would eventually threaten their survival. The message concluded with an ultimatum that forced Thompson to confront the true scope of what he had been involved in and the potential consequences of continuing the elimination campaign. The creatures offered a choice. Humans could abandon their attempts to eliminate cryptid populations and accept the existence of other intelligent species, or they could face coordinated resistance that would make the Colorado event look like a minor skirmish. They weren't threatening us, Thompson explained. They were informing us of the consequences of our actions. They had the capability to eliminate human civilization if they chose to do so, but they preferred coexistence if we could demonstrate the wisdom to accept their terms. Thompson returned from the Alaska operation with the realization that the final solution protocols were not just morally wrong, but practically impossible to implement successfully. The creatures were too intelligent, too well prepared, and too well connected to be eliminated through conventional military operations. His report to government officials recommended immediate abandonment of elimination plans and the development of diplomatic protocols for establishing formal relations with creature populations. He argued that coexistence was not only possible, but essential for preventing a conflict that humanity could not win. The response to his recommendations was swift and final. Thompson was removed from active operations, transferred to a desk position with no access to classified information, and placed under constant surveillance to ensure that he would not reveal what he had learned during his decades of cryptid hunting. "They buried me alive," Thompson confessed. "I spent the next 16 years in bureaucratic exile, watching from the sidelines as other agents continued operations that I knew were doomed to failure and morally indefensible." Thompson used his remaining years in government service to secretly document everything he had learned about creature intelligence capabilities and intentions. He compiled detailed files on every operation he had conducted, every encounter he had witnessed, and every piece of evidence that contradicted the official narrative about cryptid nature and behavior. His personal archives became the most comprehensive record of human-creature interactions ever assembled, containing information that could revolutionize scientific understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the possibility of interspecies cooperation. "I knew that someday the truth would have to come out," Thompson explained. "The lies and cover-ups couldn't be maintained forever, and when they finally collapsed, someone would need to provide an accurate account of what had really happened during those decades of secret warfare." Thompson retired from government service in 2019 with the knowledge that the conflict he had participated in was far from over. New generations of agents were continuing operations based on the same flawed assumptions and moral blindness that had characterized his own early career. The creatures remained hidden, but their patience was not unlimited. Intelligence reports suggested that younger generations of creatures were less committed to avoiding conflict than their elders, and there were indications that some populations were preparing for more aggressive responses to human encroachment. "The window for peaceful resolution is closing," Thompson warned in his final confession. "The creatures have given humanity multiple opportunities to demonstrate wisdom and restraint, but we have consistently chosen aggression and denial instead. Eventually they will conclude that coexistence is impossible and take whatever measures they deem necessary to protect themselves. Thompson's deathbed confession was recorded over several sessions during his final weeks of life, as cancer consumed his body but left his mind clear and focused. He spoke with the urgency of someone who knew that his time was running out and that the truth he carried might die with him if he didn't act quickly. "I'm dying anyway," he said during one of the recording sessions. "They can't threaten me with anything worse than what's already happening to my body, but the truth needs to survive even if I don't." The confession revealed not just the existence of cryptid species and the government's efforts to hunt them, but the moral complexity of a conflict that had no clear heroes or villains. Both humans and creatures had made choices that led to escalation and violence, but the creatures had consistently demonstrated greater wisdom and restraint than their human counterparts. "The creatures aren't perfect," Thompson admitted. "They've made mistakes, they've caused casualties, they've sometimes responded to threats with excessive force, but they've also shown mercy when they could have chosen destruction, wisdom when they could have chosen revenge, and patience when they could have chosen war." Thompson's assessment of human behavior during the conflict was far more critical. He documented systematic violations of scientific ethics, legal procedures, and moral principles that had characterized government operations from their inception. "We've lied, cheated, stolen, and killed to maintain a secret that serves no legitimate purpose," Thompson confessed. "We've destroyed evidence, silenced witnesses, and eliminated threats to our narrative regardless of the cost to innocent people. We've become the monsters we claimed to be protecting the public from." The confession also revealed the personal cost of Thompson's involvement in cryptid operations. The constant lying, the moral compromises, and the knowledge of what he had participated in had destroyed his relationships, his health, and his peace of mind. "I've spent 37 years living a lie," Thompson admitted. "I've lied to my wife, my children, my colleagues, and myself about what I was really doing and why it was necessary. I've participated in operations that violated everything I believed in and claimed to stand for." Thompson's family had paid the price for his involvement in classified operations. His marriage had failed under the strain of constant secrecy. His children had grown up without really knowing their father, and his health had been destroyed by decades of stress and moral conflict. "The work consumed everything," Thompson confessed. "There was no part of my life that wasn't affected by the lies and secrecy. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't like, someone I wouldn't trust if I met him today." But Thompson also expressed hope that his confession might serve a purpose beyond personal redemption. He believed that revealing the truth about cryptid operations might create an opportunity for humanity to choose a different path forward. "Maybe it's not too late," Thompson said during his final recording session. "Maybe if people know the truth about what we've been doing and what we're facing, they'll demand better choices from their leaders. Maybe they'll choose wisdom over fear, cooperation over domination, truth over comfortable lies." Thompson's confession concluded with specific recommendations for how humanity might approach the challenge of coexisting with other intelligent species. His proposals were based on decades of experience and deep understanding of both human and creature psychology. "First, we have to acknowledge the truth," Thompson recommended. "We have to admit that these beings exist, that they're intelligent, and that they have rights that we've been violating for decades. We have to stop the lies and cover-ups that have prevented any possibility of honest dialogue. Second, we have to approach them as equals, not as subjects for study or control. They're not animals to be managed, or resources to be exploited. They're conscious beings with their own cultures, their own values, and their own legitimate interests that deserve respect. Third, we have to be prepared to change our own behavior and assumptions. Coexistence will require humans to accept limitations on our expansion and development that we've never accepted before. We'll have to learn to share the planet instead of dominating it. Finally, we have to be patient. The creatures have good reasons to distrust humans, and rebuilding that trust will take time and consistent demonstration of good faith. We can't expect them to forgive decades of persecution and aggression overnight. Thompson died 3 days after completing his final recording, taking with him the most comprehensive knowledge of human-creature interactions ever possessed by a single individual. His confession was discovered among his personal effects by family members who initially assumed it was fiction or the product of a mind affected by cancer and medication. But the detailed technical information, The specific dates and locations and the consistency of the narrative convinced investigators that Thompson's confession represented genuine testimony about classified government operations. The confession has since been analyzed by linguists, historians, and intelligence experts who have confirmed that it contains information that could only have been known by someone with access to the highest levels of classified cryptid operations. The technical details, operational procedures, and strategic assessments match classified documents that have been leaked or declassified in subsequent years. More importantly, Thompson's confession has been corroborated by similar testimony from other former government employees who participated in cryptid operations during the same period. While none of these individuals possess Thompson's comprehensive knowledge, their accounts confirm key details and provide additional evidence for the existence of systematic government efforts to hunt and eliminate cryptid populations. The implications of Thompson's confession extend far beyond the revelation of government cover-ups and classified operations. His testimony provides evidence for the existence of multiple intelligent species that have been sharing the planet with humans for thousands of years, developing their own civilizations and technologies while remaining hidden from human observation. "We're not alone," Thompson concluded in his final statement. "We never have been. The universe is full of consciousness and intelligence that takes forms we've never imagined. The question is whether we're wise enough to recognize that intelligence when we encounter it, and humble enough to learn from beings who might be superior to us in ways that matter." Thompson's confession also serves as a warning about the consequences of human arrogance and the refusal to acknowledge intelligence that doesn't conform to our limited understanding of consciousness and civilization. "The creatures are still out there," Thompson warned. "They're still watching us, still evaluating our behavior, still deciding whether we deserve to survive as a species. The choices we make in the next few decades will determine whether our children inherit a world of cooperation and mutual respect or a world of conflict and mutual destruction." The confession has sparked intense debate within government circles about whether to continue the policy of denial and secrecy that has characterized cryptid operations for decades, or to acknowledge the truth and attempt to establish formal diplomatic relations with creature populations. Some officials argue that revelation of the truth would cause public panic, social disruption, and political chaos that could destabilize human civilization. Others contend that continued secrecy is unsustainable, and that honest acknowledgement of the situation is the only path toward peaceful resolution. Meanwhile, evidence suggests that creature populations are becoming increasingly impatient with human behavior and may be preparing for more direct action to protect their interests. Satellite imagery reveals unusual activity in remote areas known to harbor creature populations, and acoustic monitoring has detected communication patterns that suggest coordination between previously isolated groups. "Time is running out," Thompson warned in his confession. "The creatures have been patient for decades, hoping that humans would eventually demonstrate the wisdom and maturity necessary for peaceful coexistence, but their patience isn't unlimited, and our continued aggression and denial may eventually force them to conclude that coexistence is impossible." Thompson's legacy is a challenge to humanity, to choose between the comfortable lies that have defined our understanding of our place in the world and the difficult truths that might allow us to build a better future for all intelligent life on Earth. His confession stands as testimony to the possibility of redemption, the power of truth, and the hope that even the darkest secrets can eventually be brought into the light. But it also serves as a warning that some opportunities for redemption have expiration dates, and that the window for choosing wisdom over fear may be closing faster than we realize. The creatures are still out there, still watching, still waiting for humanity to prove that we deserve the knowledge and partnership they once offered. Agent Thompson's confession is our roadmap to that future, if we're brave enough to follow it and wise enough to learn from the mistakes he spent his lifetime documenting. The choice is ours, but the time for choosing may be running out. If you found Agent Thompson's shocking revelations as disturbing as we did, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our investigations into the government's darkest secrets. Share this video to help expose the truth they've been hiding for decades, and let us know in the comments what you think about this decades-long cover-up. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you the classified stories they don't want you to know about,